Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're going to dig into this really powerful idea about how societies can start to quietly come apart at the seams. And what's fascinating is that it often doesn't start with loud, obvious hatred. It starts with something much quieter, a retreat into the perceived safety of our own groups, all driven by fear.
This quote right here, it just cuts right to the heart of what we're talking about. It suggests that when we start clinging really tightly to our identities, our nationality, our culture, whatever it is, it's not always this big celebration of pride. Sometimes it's a defensive move. It's us looking for a fortress because we feel vulnerable.
All right, so where does all this start? What's the trigger that flips that switch from pride to fear? Well, it often begins with one single critical thing, a complete breakdown of trust in the systems that are supposed to protect everybody.
You see, when the police, or the courts, or the government start to feel unreliable or just plain distant, people don't just float around as individuals. That's not what happens. We immediately start looking for an alternative safety net. It's a very human search for a group, for any group, that feels like it will have our back when the main system won't.
And this is a really, really important point to get. This retreat into our groups, it isn't necessarily about ideology. It's not like everyone suddenly becomes a radical or rediscovers ancient traditions. It's more of an adaptive strategy. It's a practical, almost logical reaction to living in an environment that just feels unsafe and unpredictable.
So this leads to a pretty profound change in what identity is even for. It basically transforms from something that gives us a sense of meaning to something that acts more like an insurance policy. So think about it like this. In a healthy, functioning society, identity is expressive. It's about, our shared culture, our history, that warm feeling of belonging. But in a society under stress, identity becomes instrumental. It becomes a tool you use for survival. It's your insurance policy, it's your guarantee of loyalty, and at the end of the day, it's your promise of protection.
So what's really driving this whole thing? What's the emotional engine that takes us from belonging to pure protection? Well, it's not pride, and it's not some grand ideology. It's just fear.
This feeling of insecurity just starts to creep in when the basic ground rules of society feel shaky. You know the feeling, right? When the rules of the game seem to be constantly changing. When it feels like the whole system is rigged. When justice seems to depend on who you are, not on what you did. That's when people start looking for a system they can actually count on.
And in the middle of all that chaos and uncertainty, we naturally, almost instinctively gravitate toward the one thing that feels predictable, our group. Why? Because that group offers a very specific kind of certainty that seems to have vanished everywhere else.
First up, there's the certainty of recognition. This is that simple but incredibly powerful feeling that within your group, you're actually seen, you're heard, you're understood. You don't have to constantly explain yourself.
Next, you get the certainty of solidarity. This is that deep down belief that if things really go south for you, if you get in trouble, your people will stand with you. They'll have your back, no questions asked.
And finally, and this is the big one, it offers the certainty of defense. It's the bottom line promise that if you are threatened, your group will step up and protect you. This is the most basic, most primal function of the group as a shelter.
Okay, and this is where things get really interesting, maybe even a little counterintuitive. This deep division we're talking about, it doesn't actually need active hatred to take root. The whole process can be a much quieter, more insidious kind of unraveling.
You see, it unfolds in these subtle little steps that quietly poison how we all interact. First, your circle of trust just narrows. It becomes reserved only for us, not them. Then your ability to feel empathy starts to shrink until it only includes your own group. Pretty soon, the whole idea of a neutral space or a neutral opinion just vanishes. And finally, you start questioning the intentions of absolutely everyone on the outside.
And what happens then? Well, the whole framework for how we make decisions, it just flips. The guiding question stops being, is this fair? Or is this the right thing to do? Instead, it becomes a much narrower, much more defensive question. Is this safe for us?
And this creates a kind of division that can feel completely reasonable to the people doing it. They call it risk management discrimination. See, it's not driven by some overt, ugly ideology of hate. It's driven by a perceived need to manage risk. You prioritize your own people because, hey, they're a known quantity. They feel like a safer bet. It's discrimination just disguised as simple caution.
So you end up with this society of fortified groups, and on the surface, they look strong, right? You've got mobilized, loyal communities. But here's the question.
Why is this setup actually incredibly fragile?
Well, think about how hard it would be to reverse this trend. Any call for unity or idealism just sounds abstract and frankly dangerous. An individual is left thinking, okay, great, but why should I be the first one to trust an outsider? If I reach out and get burned, who's going to have my back then? The safest bet, every single time, is to just stay inside the shelter of your group.
So that strength you see, it's totally an illusion. Yeah, these groups look powerful, their loyalty seems rock solid, but it's all built on this incredibly brittle foundation of fear. It's a structure that can't handle complexity or nuance. It's a kind of strength that only exists as long as the fear that created it is still there.
And that's really what it all boils down to, this one critical transition. A healthy society is always integrating. It's messy, it's dynamic, it's constantly creating new connections. But when fear takes the driver's seat, that whole process just stops cold. Society stops mixing and starts building walls. It starts fortifying itself.
And that brings us to our final, and honestly, kind of chilling thought that defines the end game here. The government, the official state, it might still be there. It might be passing laws, running things on paper, but the people aren't bought in anymore. Society has quietly withdrawn its consent. Its real loyalty isn't with the state anymore. It's with the little shelters it built for itself out of fear. And that right there, that is a silent crisis that very few societies can easily come back from.